Welcome back to Below the Beat, where I uncover the untold stories behind the music you love. Today, I'm diving into Huntrix, the fictional K-pop girl group that is not so fictional anymore. Today's video is about how this group from an animated Netflix film somehow managed to break through into the real world and dominate global charts, thanks to 3 real music artists and a creative idea that blurred the line between fiction and reality to create one of 2025's most unexpected musical phenomena. Let's start with what Huntrix actually is. The group was created for K-pop Demon Hunters, a 2025 Netflix animated film that centers around 3 characters, Rumi, Mira, and Zoey, who happen to be members of a K-pop group. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of treating the music as just background material for an animated movie, the creators decided to go all in. They brought in 3 real, incredibly talented artists to voice the group: EJ, Audrey Nuna, and Rumi. These aren't random voice actors trying to sing. These are established musicians with their own careers, their own sounds, and their own fan bases. And the music they created together, it's legitimate. Pop, R&B, and pop rap that holds up against anything else on the charts right now. Think about what a bold move this was. Most animated films with fictional bands create serviceable music that works within the story, but the team behind Huntrix aimed higher. They wanted to create something that could exist beyond the screen. So who are the real voices behind Huntrix? Let's talk about EJ, Audrey Nuna, and Rumi, because understanding their individual artistry is key to understanding why this worked. Each of these artists brought their own distinct flavor to the project. They weren't chosen just because they could sing, they were chosen because they each represent different facets of modern Asian American music. One brings pop sensibilities, another brings R&B soul, and the third brings that hip-hop edge. Together, they create something that feels both cohesive and dynamic. And here's what makes this different from other fictional music projects. These artists didn't just lend their voices, they brought their artistry. This wasn't about mimicking K-pop, it was about 3 real musicians creating something authentic while embodying fictional characters. On July 4th, Huntrix released Golden as the 2nd single from the film's soundtrack through Republic Records. And something unexpected happened. It didn't just do well for a soundtrack single, it exploded. The song started climbing charts globally, not just in niche markets or among animation fans, but across mainstream streaming platforms. By late September, Huntrix was topping the global digital artist ranking on kwarb.net, which aggregates streaming, download and video data from multiple platforms. They weren't just charting, they were competing with established superstars like Taylor Swift. Think about what that means. A fictional group from an animated movie created for what could have been a throwaway soundtrack was holding its own against artists who spent years building their careers and brands. So what made Golden work? Without getting into specifics that would constitute a full music review, the track seems to have captured something authentic. It doesn't sound like a novelty song or a commercial tie-in. It sounds like a real K-pop group making real music. And listeners responded to that authenticity. Now, Huntrix isn't the first time a fictional musical act has broken through into mainstream success. The obvious comparison here is Gorillaz, Damon Albarn's animated band that became one of the most successful alternative acts of the 2000s. But there are key differences. Gorillaz was always positioned as a virtual band, a knowing commentary on celebrity culture and the music industry. The fiction was the point. With Huntrix, the fiction is almost incidental. These are real artists performing real music, and the animated characters are more like an aesthetic choice than the core concept. In some ways, Huntrix represents an evolution of this idea. In an era where virtual influencers exist and AI-generated content is everywhere, maybe we're more ready to embrace musical acts that exist in multiple dimensions, real and fictional simultaneously. Here's where the story gets even more interesting. Huntrix was scheduled to perform on The Tonight Show, starring Jimmy Fallon. Let that sink in for a moment. The Tonight Show doesn't book fictional characters, they book real artists. So how does a group that technically doesn't exist perform on live television? The answer reveals everything about what Huntrix has become. EJ, Audrey Nuna, and Rumi would appear as themselves, performing as Huntrix. The fictional has become real. The characters from an animated film have transcended their origin story and become a legitimate musical act. The artists aren't hiding behind the animation, they're embracing it as part of their collaborative identity. This is the moment where Huntrix stopped being a clever marketing concept and became something genuinely new in pop music. They're not trying to trick anyone or maintain an illusion. Everyone knows this started as a fictional group and nobody cares. The music is real, the artists are real, and that's what matters. So what does the Huntrix phenomenon tell us about music in 2025? A few things, I think. First, authenticity can come from unexpected places. We're so used to carefully constructed artist personas and brands that maybe a group that started as openly fictional feels refreshingly honest. There's no pretense here, just talented artists making music together under a shared identity. Second, the traditional path to music success is continuing to evolve. You don't need to spend years grinding it out on the club circuit or competing on reality shows anymore. Sometimes the right collaboration at the right moment, even one born from a film soundtrack, can launch you into the stratosphere. Third, audiences are sophisticated enough to embrace complexity. We can appreciate Huntrix as both a fictional K-pop group from an animated film and as a real musical project by 3 talented artists. We don't need it to be one or the other. And finally, there's something beautiful about music that exists in the space between real and fictional. It reminds us that all art is, in some sense, a beautiful lie, a creation that reveals truth through invention. I wish we had more insight into what EJ, Audrey Nuna, and Rayami think about this unexpected success. How does it feel to watch characters you voiced become global sensations? What's it like to step into fictional personas and have millions of people respond, not to the fiction, but to your real artistry? These are 3 artists who were established in their own right before Huntrix, but this project has elevated them to a different level of visibility. And they did it together, as a unit, which creates an interesting dynamic. They're simultaneously solo artists with individual careers and members of a group that technically doesn't exist outside of their collaboration. That's the kind of creative challenge that can either fall apart or create something magical. And in this case, it created magic. The story of Huntrix is still being written. We don't know if this will be a one-off phenomenon or the beginning of a new kind of musical act. We don't know if EJ, Audrey Nuna, and Rayami will continue collaborating beyond the film's promotional cycle, or if they'll return to their individual careers. But what we do know is this: for a moment in 2025, a fictional K-pop group from an animated Netflix film became real enough to compete with the biggest names in music. And that happened because 3 talented artists took a creative leap and made authentic music that reminds us that sometimes the best stories come from the most unexpected places. The line between fiction and reality in music has always been blurry. Huntrix just made it a little blurrier and a lot more interesting. That's the story behind Huntrix, a case study in how creativity, collaboration, and a willingness to blur boundaries can create something unexpected and powerful. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And let me know in the comments, what other unexpected music stories do you want me to cover? And this is Below the Beat, your backstage pass to the music industry's most fascinating secrets. I'll see you in the next one.